President Trump's Justice Department is weighing potential charges against former FBI Director James Comey.
This is a surprise.
Three sources familiar with the matter.
No, it's not, because Donald Trump ordered his attorney general to do this last week and fired a U.S. attorney because the U.S. attorney couldn't get evidence to go after his political enemies.
Three sources familiar with the matter tell MSNBC the department is considering charging the former bureau chief with lying to Congress for his response to Senator Ted Cruz of Texas during a Judiciary Committee hearing back in 2020. At the time, Comey stood by his prior testimony to the committee that he did not, as FBI director, authorize a leak of information to the Wall Street Journal for a 2016 article. Cruz questioned Comey over former FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe's insistence that Comey was aware of McCabe's decision to leak.
Chairman Grassley asked you point blank, quote, "Have you ever been an anonymous source in news reports about matters relating to the Trump investigation or the Clinton investigation?" You responded under oath, quote, "Never." So your testimony is you've never authorized anyone to leak. And Mr. McCabe, if he says contrary, is not telling the truth. Is that correct?
Again, I'm not going to characterize Andy's testimony, but mine is the same today.
As Joe mentioned, this comes just days after President Trump fired and replaced the U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia who opposed charging Comey. Former Trump lawyer Lindsay Halligan was sworn in this week for the job. If she decides to move forward with the case, she will have to move quickly. The 5-year statute of limitations will expire early next week. Two sources familiar with the situation tell MSNBC the case against Comey is far from strong.
Okay, now, those words, I mean, that is classic understatement. Far from strong. It's weak. This is a Jeanine Pirro special where a grand jury does something a grand jury never does, looks at all the evidence, and goes, nah, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Try again.
Halligan was presented this week with a memo by prosecutors that suggested the case was too weak to pursue, and they did not believe they had sufficient evidence to convince a grand jury to indict. Comey is one of the critics that President Trump specifically mentioned by name in this social media post from over the weekend. The post was widely interpreted as a call for the Attorney General and DOJ to charge his political rivals.
Again, I really I appreciate the understatement of our writers.
Far from strong.
Far from strong, and it was seen by some as
weak.
Some might
Joining
say.
us now, former U.S. Attorney and an MSNBC contributor, Barbara McQuade, the co-host of our Fourth Hour and staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, MSNBC analyst and former Republican Congressman Carlos Curbelo of Florida, and staff writer at The Atlantic, George Packer. His latest piece is entitled America's Zombie Democracy.
And that's going to be some uplifting reading for you later on this afternoon. We're going to get to George in a second. Barb, I had a torts professor who said you should see the outcome of this case coming at you like a freight train slowly moving out of the mist. Like, this is obvious with it, like it's coming straight at you. I got to say, on this Comey thing, it is. We've talked about this before. When you have the President of the United States ordering a legal attack on his political enemies, where does that usually end up?
Well, Joe, one of the things that comes to my mind is the term selective prosecution, which means even if somehow the prosecutors in this case are able to get past a grand jury and get an indictment despite very, very weak evidence from what is apparent publicly now, I think they are teeing up a motion for selective prosecution, which is a due process violation and a grounds for dismissal. What it says is you've charged me not because of any interest of justice, but because of some arbitrary motivation like politics. I think one tell is the fact that we're now running up against the statute of limitations. These events occurred almost 5 years ago. It's not a complicated question. Either he did or didn't lie 5 years ago, and it was related to testimony and occurrences that had happened in 2016. And so the fact that they're looking at it now, I think that also tells you how weak it is.
So, Barbara, the sequence of events, just to cut through all this, is the Trump-appointed U.S. attorney effectively says there's no case here, gets forced out of his job, replaced by Lindsay Halligan, a personal attorney for Donald Trump who has no prosecutorial experience. She becomes the U.S. attorney, is immediately met with a memo from prosecutors who say, yeah, there's not much here. We don't think we even have probable cause. So how does this go forward from here?
Well, it'll be interesting to see because, of course, a grand jury has to not just review this case, but agree that there's probable cause. And there are a couple of weaknesses there. One, the Inspector General has already looked at this and concluded, based on the same evidence, that Comey did not authorize any leak. Also, based on that clip we just heard, listen to the questions. Cruz asks him whether Comey himself served as a leak, and then he points out what McCabe said. And then what Comey says is, I don't know what McCabe said, but I stand by my prior testimony that he did not serve as a leak. Now they're talking about whether he authorized the leak. Those are the kinds of discrepancies that can tank a prosecution. But it is concerning that it is suddenly a switch in personnel that would change the recommendation of an indictment.
All right, former U.S. Attorney Barbara McQuade, thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. Well, and again, everything's in the public here. Right? There is no Watergate. There is no Iran-Contra. There is just Truth Social. This is what we're going to do. We're going to attack our political enemies. It's all right here. And while that may feel good for the president to do at the time, I don't know a judge that's not going to say, this is selective prosecution. You got an IG report. What are you doing? Why are you wasting my time? And he always puts his attorneys in these positions where, and again, I always use Rudy as a great example. He'll do the press conference outside the courthouse, and then he'll go in the courthouse and go, well, no, we're not saying the election was stolen. I mean, and now he's fired a U.S. attorney. He's hired a new U.S. attorney. And the question is, does she want to put herself in an extraordinarily difficult position as a lawyer? Just because the president wants to get back at his enemies.
Yeah, Truth Social has made reporters' jobs a lot easier. It's just right there. Oh, okay, that's what we're going to do.
You don't have to be Woodward and Brady. You don't have to go into the basement or go into a parking garage to figure, what's the White House thinking? Hold on,
as long as you've got cell service.
Here.
As long as you have cell service, you can do it. I actually do. There's been a theory long since the beginning of the Trump era that because so much of it is out in the open, it has almost less of an impact if it was dug up secretly. Stories sometimes maybe would have more legs if they were uncovered, Woodward and Bernstein style, as opposed to just being put there on the phone. But I think that we're seeing this. This is a president who promised retribution, president whose White House has said for those first months of his term, oh, no, we're not doing that. Well, we're seeing it kick into gear. Yeah. They're kicking the gear, and whether it's direct orders, in this case it clearly was, or just a tone set by the White House, by the president, that he is seeing people, he wants them to carry out his wishes. And even if this doesn't go anywhere, it's still, for James Comey, it is expensive, it is exhausting, it is stressful.
I wonder if there's a legal defense fund out there for people like James Comey who are targeted by the president.
One wonders. I mean, James Comey has his, not too many fans on either side of the aisle, truthfully, but certainly there'll be people who see this and say, this is unfair, this is unjust. We could help out. But this is part of the idea. Is you make Trump, as a private citizen with his litigation, his propensity for lawsuits, he knows he can outlast people, he can spend money, he can make their life miserable, even if their facts don't support him.
George, talking about not trying to hide the ball here, I think your piece is very important because sometimes